But 6 months is sort of a drop-dead time period. And that would cover the notification timelines for the, that the ROE has to have, the time period for the ROE's decision, the time period for the state superintendent's decision. These 6 months also build in that 35-day administrative review time, because we don't, want that as well. It all has to end approximately a little over 2 months, where if it's going to go to referendum vote, it has to be submitted to your county clerk for them to do all of the things they have to do to get all the ballot ready. So these are just the next sets. April, in order to hit April, you'd have to have your petition approximately your first week of October in 18 in order to hit April of 19. We don't have a November of 19 election. We do have our March primary, where the petition is filed approximately the middle of September of 19. And our November 20 general, where you file the petition approximately first week of May of 2020. In effect, then at that point, you can move everything forward. April 2021 would be filed approximately first week of October 2020. So, for this 2-year cycle, you can basically advance that to the next set of 2 years. I tossed this in here as well. If you wanted to do a feasibility study on this option, we do have state funding to pay a portion of the cost if you meet the requirements. In general, our feasibility studies is a tool used to investigate advantages or disadvantages of a reorganization option. Now, in order to have state funding, 1, the option must be a legal option. And then 2, all districts within that legal option must approve taking part of the study. And we do fly back to that affected district. So we would need both Summit Hill and Lincoln Way approving it through a board resolution to approve the initiation of the study, as well as district superintendent signing off on the agreement in order to access state funding. The districts involved would choose their study consultant. We do fund on a first-come, first-served basis. The last many years, when we have had funding, we have not run out of funding. Way back when we started these, back in like 02, 03 or something, by January, we were out of funding because it was a new shiny thing and everybody wanted to participate. Now, not as many people do, just because it seems to be a little more people who are really looking into some kind of reorganization, as opposed to, oh look, well they have this, but we aren't really talking about it, but we could get some funding, let's do it anyway. Our allotment is based on the number of districts in the study and their combined student enrollment. Any cost of the study beyond the state allotment would be the responsibility of the districts involved. We do fund on a fiscal year basis, so your study would have to be completed by June 30 of that fiscal year. And we do have specific study requirements, parameters to look at, items that always have to be answered in a consolidation, such as curriculum, transportation, various finance areas, looking at trends in enrollment and test scores, looking at facility usage. So our final study does have to meet all the parameters. Now, all of this is for a state-funded study. If you want a private funded study by just local funds or donated funds or anything, we meaning the state board, because it's not going to access any state funding, it doesn't matter if all districts agree. It doesn't matter if you hit every single parameter in there, because you're not asking for, it doesn't matter if you're done by the end of the fiscal year, because you're not asking for any sort of state allotment. So if it's the idea of, oh, we can't get all the districts to agree, but we have somebody who will fund the total cost of the study. And if you want to do that, fine, go ahead. Since the state isn't involved in the state funding, we're not going to tell you anything you have to do on a study that is being funded by local funds or private funds.
So 2 questions related to that. A ballpark cost, and I know that this has got to be all over the map depending on the size, but...
Yeah, and we haven't had, like I said, many studies lately. The last ones we had last year were a total cost of $12,500. Maybe 15, 20, just because, you know, you might kind of want to think of that due to area, as well as if your consultant isn't from the general area, they have travel costs and everything, and you have a unique situation that you're looking at. So those are ballparks.
The other thing would be, let's assume both districts buy in to this. What is the work effort that is put on the district staff? Obviously, a concern of 161, and I'm not in a position to speak for 210, but I believe would be a concern for them also, is we still have districts to run and kids to take care of, which is priority.
What we usually see, I mean, I'm not in at the consultant level, but I'm thinking what they do is they will want to meet. They will then probably give a list of records they need. You gather the records, you give it to the consultants, they go off, do their thing. Of course, they would need a contact person if they get into something and say, yeah, I just don't understand what this means. And then usually the consultant, though we don't require it, usually at the end of the study, the consultants come and present at a public hearing. A lot of times they like to do walkthroughs of the buildings, so they would have to coordinate that because, you know, to have, you know, someone in effect escort them through the building. But that's usually it. I mean, what they, like I said, what they do is they have a list. This is the type of records we need. You know, provide them how you can. You can provide them electronically, that's great. You know, then they go off to their homes and they do the work as they can and just ask for questions. So they aren't probably going to be doing the majority of the work in your district and need somebody's constant attention. They're going to go off to their offices or their homes or whatever and do the bulk of the study there.
But you are going to have to deal with a significant data.
Yes, yes, because they are going to need data from the districts in order to pull their stuff, pull their analysis together. So yes, you are going to have to be pulling certain records.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, and the study has to be ready for the ROE for their petition?
There is no legal requirement that requires a feasibility study. Okay, I didn't say that very well. Feasibility studies are feasibility studies are not a required element. So, you know, we talked about your petition has to be X. There is no place in the law that says a feasibility study must be done. They are an optional tool, either both state funded or privately funded. A lot of districts who are pursuing consolidations, who have a study done, then bring that in as an evidence item. Please mark this as petitioner's evidence. You know, these are the things that the study said that bolsters why we want to do this. But your petition is not going to be done specifically because you don't have a feasibility study. It is optional. It is not required in law.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, take any questions. Also, I mean, we talked about this ahead of time, before the meeting ahead of time. Anyway, my contact information is on the last slide. It's actually also on the cover page. You were more than welcome to give me a call, give me an email. The answer is the answer, so that's why I say I'll talk to anybody. It doesn't have to be a district official. I will talk to the public. Again, we give factual answers. We still can't give opinions, even if it's just you and me on the phone, because that's not our place. So if you're comfortable just calling in or sending an email, you're welcome to do that. If you are not comfortable doing that, some people aren't. Some people aren't comfortable calling the state agency. If your board members are agreeable, you could funnel the questions through them and they could do something and contact me. So in general, if we talk on the phone, it's a verbal answer. If you send something to me, an email, unless I don't understand your question, I usually will email back. Because I figure if you email in, that's the way you would like to be communicated with. So, like I said, you're welcome to do that. All these folks here in front, welcome to give me a call or an email. And again, how anybody is comfortable. I'm not going to say I only take questions from these folks in front, but if you don't feel comfortable emailing or calling in directly and want, your board members to do it for you, you guys can work it out with them.
So, real quick, do we have any other questions from up here about the presentation of this?
Yes. Michelle, could you clarify, because I know a lot of people were concerned, the difference, I'm not asking your opinion, the difference between de-annexation or detachment and annexation and consolidation?
Okay. Detachment, we do have a detachment as a specific term in our law. And that's one reason why I would talk about taking territory away and not detach. Detachment is where territory on the border petitions. I live in District A, and my territory abuts up to District B. I don't want to be in District A anymore. I would rather be and belong to District B. So it's very similar. This whole petition and public hearing, it's all at the regional level. It doesn't come up to us. There's no referendum vote. But there is a process where I could petition to take my territory, my land, my property out of District A and annex it by detaching and annex it into District B. District A, District B, they say the same districts. There's a slight change in border. No new districts are created. It doesn't go through any referendum vote. So detachment annexation is a specific term and a specific process for just changing over boundaries. Because what is being talked about here is formation of a new district. Like we talk about, a unit district can be formed from compact, contiguous territory that isn't already in a unit district. That definition doesn't say whole districts, it says compact, contiguous territory, which is why what you were talking about can legally be done. Not giving a value judgment, just legally you can point to that and say, this matches what we want to do. So that's why we're calling it unit district formation. Unit district formation is kind of an official term out of our law. But it's with few differences. Its basic process is also the same if we had a whole high school district and a whole elementary district going together into a unit district. Or if we had 2 unit districts forming a brand new unit district, or 2 or more elementaries forming a brand new elementary district. They're basically the same in the concept that pieces or wholes are coming together to form a new district. So we consider that under the broad consolidation umbrella. In fact, everybody understands the word consolidation. 2 or more things coming together and becoming new. Consolidation as a term doesn't even appear in our law because we've divided it out by unit district formation, combined elementary, combined unit district. But that's why somebody brought this up today. We do have brochures out online. Pathwise, if you want to read up on it, it's under the consolidation brochure. So it's under a common term of consolidation. And in there, you'll actually see the little bullet point that says any compact and contiguous territory not already in a unit district. So that's it. And that's one reason, amongst yourself, you can talk detachment as a common term. I'm so coached that detachment in my office, in my cubicle, has a specific definition that's not what you're looking at here. So that's why I didn't even, hopefully not, say the word detachment and just talk about territory coming away. Because you can also think of it as a layer cake. You got your high school layer, and underneath you got individual elementary layers. What you're thinking about and what you're investigating is taking the boundary of Summit Hill and then drawing it up through the drawing it up through the high school district, taking it and making a new K-12. That one territory would serve all K-12 kids in the same district. So that's why we're forming unit district, so we're not detaching as the official term.
You've been doing this for what, 15 years?
15.
Okay, in your experience, this is a sobering question here. How long does this process go on an average?
Okay, we'd already talked, your petition has to be done 6 months. So that marks you back 6 months. Committee of 10, 3 to 6 to 9 months. Some do it slower, some do it quicker. Because you're going to have a lot to look at, you might be more of the middle, the 6 months-ish. Feasibility studies, we had a feasibility, like 2 feasibility studies done this year in 3 months. But they were two, one was looking at one district closing their high school building and sending on a tuition basis, called deactivation. So that was very narrow focus. The other was a small, 2 unit districts, none of them were very huge. So that's why that only took 3 months. You do want a feasibility study, 6 months-ish, 9-ish, just because also your schedules and the consultant's schedules. That's also why we say, even for the state funding, we let the districts pick their consultant. You're the ones that are going to have to work with them the most. So you can move that back as to how much investigation you're going to need before you get to that point.
Thank you.
Karen, did you have a question?
No, actually, I was just going to ask you about the timeline. So when we do the ROE, we're looking at 6 months, which means that we would never meet, or potentially not meet, the December 31st petition on the ballot. Am I correct?
Which December?
So in Will County, a referendum question has to be filed with the Will County Clerk's office by December 31st.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and that's that almost 2.5 months dish. Where before it even gets to the county clerk's office, it has to go through its whole path. So I mean, this isn't, a lot of policy questions are just get your signature, put it on the ballot. But in the school code, forming a new district has a path. So you got to work that path and really work through the school code. And then yes, everything has to be done so that your regional superintendent is actually going to be the election authority, along with making the hearing. If this goes to ballot, they are the election authority to put the question into the ballot. They're the ones who get the results to certify. They are also the election authority for the new board election. After the new board's elected, they are going to hold the first meeting, seat the new board, have them elect their officers, and then turn it over to that newly elected board. I basically put the 2-year cycle, but yeah, unless you're already got things going, you're not going to be able to walk a petition into them. Now again, these are approximates, which means you could probably sneak 1-2 weeks after. You cannot sneak 1 to 2 months after. It's just not going to make it through. So yeah, I did put those down. It depends on how much you are thinking, if you do decide to go forward, of meeting the bottom 2 as you go along. We do also make more detailed timelines it walks back in effect to that first week of October, but it talks about file approximately here, which would give this notice, this notice, this notice, approximate time for a hearing, time period for this, time period for that. So I mean, we do have those timelines. We're constantly updating them, so we have those for elections. For this, the approximate, as you go on, you are welcome to take this and update it to the next 2-year cycle, or you're welcome to call in and ask. We don't have our timelines online yet, But if you call and say, hey, I'm looking for a detailed timeline for, consolidations, March 20 primary, it's a one-page summary, and then I can send it to you. So, yeah.
So what I'd like to do is if anyone has questions, let me do two things here. First, we'll open it up for questions now if anybody has general ones. My second ask would be, per our last meeting, if you have questions that you would like answered that come up after the meeting, because you've got some time to digest this, and if you would like to help the process. Michelle works for you the same way our school board does, so you are, of course, free to contact her via telephone whenever you would like. However, if you would like to assist the process, sending your question via email and then forwarding that response on to us would help collect information for sharing with the greater population. If you have a telephone conversation, unlike this meeting and unlike an email that's not recorded, you're going to say you heard something, someone else is going to say they heard something else, and then we have to go back to the source anyway to get the correct answer. The group of people up here don't know what we don't know. There are no experts in this sitting up here. So if you have a question, chances are that question would be good for everyone. If you have the opportunity to share it and then feel like sharing it with us, we would welcome that information, and we will add it to our ultimate repository of information that we talked about during our last meeting. So,
And as you talk about that before I forget, you are more than welcome to put the you are more than welcome to put this electronic presentation on your website. If you wish to do that, I mean, the only thing I ask is to put it on as a whole.
yeah.
Because then that would have our contact at the beginning and end. And anybody then who picks it up knows where it comes from, as opposed to, well, there's a couple of pages, but I don't know where it came from. That would be the only ask I would ask, is that it goes on. If you put it on as a whole.
Yeah.
But you're more than welcome to put it on your website. If someone asks for it electronically before that and wants it on there, you're more than welcome to share it with this. In effect, this was meant for your situation, so the way I look at it is this is your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, got a ton of information. Does anybody have room for another question? Yes, ma'am. Let me just say, good luck.
Am I understanding correctly that when you're talking about writing a petition with the division of assets and liabilities, am I understanding correctly that that's up to the ROE to determine the division of the asset, or just one person, or?
No, I mean, there is a specific process that is being led by the ROE. And please understand, I've never had to delve into this part because we haven't had it. In that section is talk about hiring appraisers to look at everything.
Okay.
So when we say the ROE does it, that's mostly the ROE is in charge, initiates, and administers the action.
And on the petition, it would simply say that this distribution of assets and liabilities will be done per the ROE and section ILCS, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm sure the ROE is going to pull input from the districts involved. So, yeah, I mean, when we say ROE, that's not, Regional Superintendent Sean Walsh in one room, doors locked, saying, just me, they'll come out in 3 months. No, there is a process of appraisal, there's a process for stipulations, as well as input from the districts involved.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Lori, go ahead.
I have a concern, when you're talking about the board and new board being elected, it kind of sounds like the original board disappears and Summit Hill still needs to function.
Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay.
Were you done with your question? I'm sorry.
I think you get it.
I just don't
I
get
don't
it.
want our board to disappear
No,
when Summit Hill
the-
needs to function.
The Summit Hill School Board, as well as the Lincoln Way School Board, but the Summit Hill School Board is going to be in effect over the Summit Hill Elementary District until Summit Hill Elementary goes away. So on that effective date, when Summit Hill Elementary, the assumption this is done, Summit Hill Elementary will cease to be on, in effect, June 30 of whatever effective date. New unit district comes in July 1, whatever effective date. So no, Summit Hill School Board stays in effect, has all of their authority over the Summit Hill Elementary until June 30 crossover. And what's going to happen is that new board has only specific transitional items that they can do for the new district. There's a specific list. It is things such as hire a new administrator and other, hire a superintendent and other administrators, set up a bank account, set up architects or accountants as needed, provide for the transition from the original districts into the new district. What would be hoped is in any consolidation, I'm not finger pointing, in any consolidation is that transition board and original boards work together in order to provide a smooth transition. But original boards stay in effect as long as that original district is in effect. So you're going to have kind of multiple boards working.
So that
No.
committee of 10 would be in effect and the school board would be.
Well, the committee of 10 is only officially in effect until that petition has made it through its phases. Now, a lot of times the committee might stay together to provide information to the public as you go, kind of like a vote committee or providing information to the public as you get to vote. They may come into the new board to say, well, we made some plans. Here's, do you have any questions? This is what we did. But it's the actual elected school board who will be then doing that transition item. Now, that said, you may have crossover because you may have people who have been on that committee who are really excited about this new district that say, hey, and I also want to run for school board for this new school district. So a lot of times you do have crossover in that you have someone who was on the committee of 10 who then is elected to the new school board. You might have people who were in the original boards who then say, I also want to run for the new school board. So, you have some crossover there. So it's very, I will say it's very rare that you have an elected board that has all 7 brand new people of the brand new board that had nothing to do with any planning of the consolidation. Just because the folks who are doing that kind of planning are very proponent of what's going on and very involved and would be the type of people I would think then who might want to transition into the school board, as well as existing school board members who do like what they're doing might want to, I would like to run for school board for the new district as well.
So taking that one step further, the District 210 school board would remain, because
Yes.
District 210 will remain.
Yes.
On the effective date of the new unit district, any 210 board member living within the new unit district would by statute become ineligible for the Lincoln Way board.
Correct.
And their seat would become vacant.
Correct. Just no different than if they picked up in
Okay.
because they would, and that's just kind of like the way you laid it out, kind of just a logical progression.
Yeah.
If this is a new unit district,
By statute, you
by
can't be on their
statute,
board.
they do not belong to the Lincoln Way High School District anyway. They do not live in the Lincoln Way High School District territory. That's why I say it'd be the same thing as if someone moved to Wisconsin, they no longer live in wherever. Yeah. So, and again, that's just a logical progression.
But the 210 board as a whole
The board
stays
as
intact.
an entity would stay intact.
Okay.
And then then there are specific provisions
Filling
to
this.
fill vacancies.
Yes, okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Regarding the feasibility study, I know you say it's not a required component. However, it would seem, especially in a situation like this, the scale of it, it would appear to me, and it only makes sense that the information that would be gathered within that feasibility study would be invaluable information, just completely critical. It would seem that way. When looking at the fact that when the petition makes its way to the state superintendent for review to either approve it or deny it, at that point, you're really only looking, with what you stated before, at what was presented at the hearing.
Correct.
That hearing, so my question is, how much credence and weight is given to the feasibility study itself, because it's not a required component, and it's not necessarily part of that hearing unless it's presented as evidence,
Yeah.
like you're saying. And how much, this is like part two of the question, would there be any difference in the recognition of it and the information gathered of it on a state, the state-funded feasibility study versus a privately funded feasibility study?
Okay. First.
I know it's a lot.
No. I think I got it, and we'll check back with you at the end just in case I missed one something to answer. We would only be able to give weight to the feasibility study if it's entered into evidence. If you have a study and you just use it for your own purposes, and then don't specifically enter it, but you talk about your curriculum, you talk about how your district's going to look, you talk about how it's going to be good for the kids, because that's what the proponents of the petition do. But you don't specifically enter the feasibility study, we can't pull that feasibility study, because only if it's entered into the record. So if it is entered into the record, what people usually do, instead of just saying, oh yeah, here's our feasibility study, put it in the record, they talk about items within it that bolster their argument. So it's kind of both. They're saying, hey, here's our feasibility study, and if you turn to page 100, this said this. We found that through our evidence as well. A lot of times feasibility studies are used as jumping off points. I mean, no, they aren't required. Sometimes an outside voice is good, because it is not, the board would have, and staff would have to do a lot of work gathering information, but they're not doing the analysis. So it's less work than if they had to do the studying their own. So it's an outside voice, as well as it gets you information you didn't have before you started. Even if you found out even if districts who have done studies and then after the studies found, yeah, this isn't going to work for us, it's not a failed study because it still gave them information that they did not have. That said, folks who want to go off and study the process and the individual items themselves could probably come up with a lot of the same type of information as you'd have in a feasibility study. It might not be an outside voice, but it could be done. Again, it would have to be entered into evidence, but I don't think we really weigh state-funded versus, private-funded. The last couple private-funded studies that I know of that have been done, the consultants took our parameters as to what for the studies, we say, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. That's out on our website. And even if you're doing a study that you're not asking for state funding with, but you say, yeah, I think all these good things are good to study, you are more than welcome to snitch our stuff and say, well, we have a donation, and that's what we had in one. They were, I think, intending to do a state-funded study, and in the area there was a big industry that just said, oh, look, we'll just give you the money and pay for the study. But they still did all the parameters, because I think they thought they were going to do study, do a little bit of private, a little bit of funding, until the company just said, yeah, here's your check, just do your study. And again, sometimes maybe the private funding may be an issue of not getting all districts to be able to sign off. Maybe it's a timing issue. We don't think we're going to make it by June 30. We don't think we're going to make your time periods. But yeah, we still like looking at all of these things, so we're still going to ask our consultant to look at a majority of those things. So a lot of times, they might even be indistinguishable between state funded and the other. So, but yeah, I mean, if you enter a study and, I mean, even if it's private, I'm showing all you, not necessarily you. The folks who are wanting the study are still going to want a good study that gives them a lot of information. So I think it's that more than we ticked every single box for the state funding in distinguishing between the two of them. So, did I cover?
You did, that's great.
Anyone else?
Regarding referendum vote, as Lincoln Way is the other affected district, it would be a 60% majority of Lincoln Way's population as a whole, not each individual feeder district within Lincoln Way.
Yeah,
Am I correct
and
in
it's
saying
actually
that?
it's actually just a majority.
Okay.
Okay, I thought I heard
60%, it's just a majority.
One vote over.
1 over half.
51? Okay.
1 over half.
Okay.
Just 50, whatever half is plus 1. It's not a super majority. It's just majority.
And that's
Okay.
Lincoln Way's population.
And that
as
is
a whole.
Lincoln, because
Okay.
the district affected is Lincoln Way. It's not the individual feeder districts. Again, those parents and those voters who belong to Mokina belong to Lincoln Way, but where we're looking at it is not individual, we're looking at Lincoln Way as a district block. Think of it as if when Lincoln Way would put out their building bond questions, it didn't have to be passed by each underlying, it had to be passed by the voters of Lincoln Way High School District as a voting block. So think of it, Lincoln Way High School District as a voting block, Summit Hill 161 as a voting block.
So is that going to be two separate questions, or is that just,
Um,
as a parent that falls under both districts, am I going to be answering a question 2 times?
The actual wording of the question is something that the county clerk would have to do. I'm assuming it would be a question that then they'd have to pull precincts to say, okay, here's everybody that voted on it, first. There you got your first block, so you know that. And then of that block, who is the Summit Hill precincts to be able to pull that? That is where the way I think it's envisioned to be. Sometimes the way we envision it doesn't quite get translated. I'm not saying your county specifically, because this was a different county, but doesn't quite translate between ROE writing and the county clerk. But I'm envisioning it to be a single question that then county clerk does a vote division to come up with the 2 cents.
Because my yes vote would be a Summit Hill yes vote and a Lincoln Way yes vote.
Yes, it is.
So in terms of gathering that, and as far as the percentage would go, it's a percentage of both of the affected districts' vote of that 50 or half plus 1 or less. And the same way, a no vote would be
Yes.
the same exact thing.
Yes, because you're probably not voting yes for the elementary, but
Of
no
course
for,
not.
no for high school. So I mean, it's envisioned as a single question vote division at the level where they count the votes.
Okay, anyone else? I'd like to thank you very much for coming out. I really appreciate it. And as stated, we will make this available through our meeting website where we'll put the audio for the recording. I believe everyone who's here got a paper copy. If you need a paper copy, we have a couple extra. Please let us know. At this point in time, we're going to move forward. I believe the only other thing we have is public comments, correct? So are there any public comments? Outside of questions, just general public comments? None? Okay, as we have no public comments and we have finished the presentation, can I have a motion that we adjourn the meeting?
So moved. Second.
Oh, stop.
Oh, yeah, future meeting dates, right?
Yeah. I'm wrong.
Withdraw my second.
Nice, you made a motion and no one seconded it. Motion fails. Poor Tammy back there is trying to record this. Future meeting dates, we were aiming for Wednesdays in between our normal meetings, so our next meeting is next Wednesday, and then we move into September.
Regular board.
Our next 161 regular board meeting is next Wednesday. Then we move into September, and do you have our first?
We do the 5th, which would be
We have a meeting on the 5th?
let's see, 5th to 12th. 12th is our,
Summit Hill meeting?
Should be the 12th.
is our board meeting. The 12th is our board meeting.
So let's shoot for the 19th of September, because it should be the 12th and the 26th, our two regular 161 board meetings. So we will set the next meeting date for the 19th of September, here again in Mary Drew,
For the unit district.
for the unit district committee, and that'll be at 6:30. That works for you?
As I know it does.
Works for you? Okay. Having set the next meeting date for the unit committee at the 19th of September, now can I have a motion that we adjourn?
Yes, I second.
I motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor acknowledge by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming in.
We have cookies and